You know that feeling when life gets quiet for a moment, and suddenly you wonder, what am I actually doing here? Maybe it happens when you're driving alone, or washing dishes, or lying in bed before sleep comes. That gentle question just appears. Why am I here? If you're listening to this right now, you've felt this. That quiet wondering about your place in all of this. It's not worry or anxiety. It's deeper than that. More like curiosity about the whole mystery of being alive. Here's something beautiful that happened in ancient China. Some very wise people noticed something simple about this question. They saw that whatever part of you is wondering, that quiet, aware part, is actually completely at peace. Right now, something in you is listening to these words. Something is noticing your thoughts. Something is just quietly here. And that something has never been lost, never been confused, never needed fixing. For the next few hours, we're going to explore the gentlest discovery you can make. Not by thinking harder about life, but by noticing what's already perfectly okay, right here, right now. You've been looking for peace, but the part of you that's looking is already peaceful. Let me show you what I mean. Here's something interesting that happens to almost everyone. You're going about your day, and suddenly you think, who am I really? Not your name or your job, but who you actually are underneath all that. Most of us start looking for ourselves in all the usual places. We check our memories. We think about our personality. We consider our hopes and dreams. We might even look deeper into our thoughts, our feelings, our beliefs. But here's what's strange. The more you look, the more confusing it gets. You might sit quietly, searching inside for who you really are. You keep looking and looking. And the strangest thing happens. You can't find anyone home. At first, this might scare you. Where is the person you thought you were? But then, something beautiful might dawn on you. That spacious, quiet awareness that's looking give, that's more you than anything you could ever find. This is what Zen teachers have been pointing to for centuries. When you really look for yourself, you don't find a thing. You find the space in which all things appear. Think about it right now. Close your eyes if you can, or just look softly ahead. Now try to find the one who's listening to these words. Not your body, that's what you can see and feel. Not your thoughts, those are what you can hear in your mind. But the actual you, the one who's aware of all this. Can you find that one? Or do you just find a kind of open, aware presence? Maybe you've experienced this too. Spending time looking for yourself and thinking you'd find some core identity, some essential you. Instead, you find this incredible spaciousness. It's like looking for the owner of a house and discovering the house is empty, but somehow that emptiness is more alive than any person could be. This isn't a philosophical idea. It's something you can discover right now. That aware presence that's reading these words, try to grab hold of it. Try to locate it. Try to define it. You can't, can you? It's like trying to bite your own teeth. But here's the beautiful part. That ungrasped awareness is more you than anything you've ever identified with. It's what's been here through every change in your life. When you were 5 years old, it was here. When you're 90, it will still be here. Unchanged, untouched, completely at peace. Most spiritual seeking starts with a case of mistaken identity. We think we're the character in the story, the person with problems, the one who needs to grow and change and become enlightened. But Zen points to something simpler. You're not the character. You're the awareness in which the character appears. Maybe you've spent time trying to fix yourself, working on your anger, your fear, your past, and that work has its place. But have you ever noticed who's the one observing all these emotions? Who's aware of the anger when it arises? That observer is completely untouched by what it observes. It's like watching clouds pass through the sky. The sky never gets cloudy. This is why so many people get confused when they start looking for themselves. They're looking for a someone, and they keep finding a no one. But that no one is not empty in a blank way. It's empty in the way that space is empty, full of possibility, aware, present. Ancient Zen teachers used to say something wonderful. You are perfect as you are, and you could use a little improvement. What this means is, the essential you, that aware presence, is already complete. It doesn't need fixing or finding, but the story you tell about yourself, that can always be updated. Right now, notice how effortless it is to be aware. You're not working to be conscious. You're not trying to be present. Awareness is just naturally here. It's like the sun. It doesn't try to shine. It just shines. This awareness that you are, it has never been born. Think about that. When you were born, your body appeared. Your mind developed. Your personality formed. But the awareness itself, that was never created. It's what all these other things appeared in. And here's something that might surprise you. This same awareness that you are, it's what everyone else is too. When you look into someone's eyes, what you're really seeing is your own awareness looking back at you. Different bodies, different minds, different stories, but the same essential aware presence. Maybe you've experienced this, sitting with a small child, looking into those clear eyes, suddenly realizing the awareness looking out of their eyes is the same awareness looking out of yours. Age, experience, knowledge, all different, but that essential presence, identical. This is why when you really find yourself, you find everyone. And when you really find everyone, you find no one in particular. You find this open, loving awareness that includes everything. So when that question arises, who am I? Try this. Instead of looking for someone, look as someone. Instead of searching for awareness, be the awareness that's searching. Instead of trying to find yourself, rest as the finding itself. The one you've been looking for has been doing the looking all along. Which makes you wonder, what was never actually born? Here's a simple experiment you can try right now. Try to remember the moment you became aware. Not when you were born, that's different, but the actual moment when awareness itself began. Go ahead, look back as far as you can. Your earliest memory maybe. You're 3 years old, playing in the backyard. But even then, something was already aware. Something was already present to notice the playing. Go back further. Before that memory, before any memory you can recall, can you find the moment when awareness switched on? It's impossible, isn't it? This is one of the most beautiful discoveries you can make. The awareness that you essentially are. It has no beginning that you can find. Your body was born. Your mind developed. Your personality formed over time. But that basic aware presence, it seems to have always been here. Think about all the changes you've been through. When you were a child, your body was completely different. Your thoughts were different. Your beliefs, your fears, your hopes, all different. Even your cells have been replaced many times over. Literally nothing physical about you is the same as it was 10 years ago. But something has remained constant through every single change. That quiet awareness that notices everything. The same awareness that looked out through your child eyes is looking out through your adult eyes right now. Unchanged, untouched by time. This awareness doesn't age. Think about that for a moment. Your body ages. Your mind accumulates experiences. But the basic capacity to be aware, does that feel older to you now than it did when you were young? If you really look, you'll notice that awareness itself feels exactly the same as it always has. Timeless, fresh, present. It's like a clear mirror that reflects everything but is never changed by what it reflects. In Zen, there's a beautiful question that teachers sometimes ask. Show me your original face before your parents were born. This isn't a riddle to solve with your mind. It's an invitation to look directly at what you are before any story begins. Before your parents met, before your body formed, before your mind learned language, before any experience at all, what were you? Not who were you, but what were you? You might think this is impossible to know, but actually, it's the easiest thing in the world. What you were before any experience is what you are right now, beneath all experience. That aware, present, open space in which everything appears. This is why Zen teachers say that birth and death are like dreams within a dream. From the perspective of awareness itself, nothing is ever actually born, and nothing ever actually dies. Things appear and disappear like waves on the ocean, but the ocean itself remains unchanged. Your body appeared in awareness. Your thoughts arise in awareness. Your whole life story unfolds in awareness. But awareness itself was never born. It's what everything else is born into. This might sound abstract, but you can verify it right now. Notice that you're aware of your body. Notice that you're aware of your thoughts. Notice that you're aware of sounds around you. That awareness itself, is it inside your body? Or is your body appearing inside awareness? Really look at this. Where does awareness end and everything else begin? You can't find a boundary, can you? It's more like everything is floating in an ocean of awareness, and you are that ocean. This is completely different from how we usually think about ourselves. We imagine we're small beings inside big bodies, inside a big world. But what if it's actually the reverse? What if the world appears inside awareness, and you are that awareness? From this perspective, asking when you were born is like asking when space was born. Space isn't born into the universe. The universe appears in space. Similarly, awareness isn't born into the world. The world appears in awareness. And just like space, awareness has no age, no history, no beginning or end. It's simply here, present, available, unchanging. You might wonder, but what about my birth certificate? What about my birthday? Of course, something was born on that day. Your body began. Your brain started developing. Your story as a human being commenced. But the awareness in which all this happened, that was already fully present. It's like a movie screen. All kinds of stories can play on the screen. Birth scenes, death scenes, love stories, adventures. But the screen itself is never born or dies in any of the movies. It's simply the unchanging background in which every story appears. You are like that screen. The story of your life plays across the screen of your awareness. But the awareness itself, that's never born, never dies, never changes. It's what makes every experience possible. This understanding changes everything. When you realize that your essential nature was never born, you also realize it can never die. What was never created can never be destroyed. What has no beginning can have no end. This isn't a belief or a philosophy. It's something you can discover for yourself right now. That aware presence that's listening to these words, try to find when it began. Try to locate its birth certificate. Try to age it, or change it, or damage it. You can't, can you? It's completely untouchable, completely safe, completely here. It's like finding out you're made of something indestructible, something that has never been threatened and never could be. When this really sinks in, a beautiful peace can arise, because you realize that what you most deeply are has never been in any danger. Your body can age, your mind can forget things, your circumstances can change completely, but this aware presence that you are, nothing can touch it. It's been here all along, quiet, patient, peaceful, waiting for you to notice. Not waiting in time, but waiting outside of time altogether. This is your original face. This is what you were before your parents were born. This is what you are right now. This is what you'll be when your current story ends. Unchanging awareness itself. And once you see this clearly, you start to wonder about something else. If you were never really born, then what exactly is it that seems to suffer? Here's something you might have noticed about pain. When you stub your toe, there's an immediate sharp sensation. But then something interesting happens. Your mind starts telling a story about it. That really hurt. I'm so clumsy. This always happens to me. Now my whole day is ruined. And suddenly, what was just a quick physical sensation becomes something much larger. This is the difference between pain and suffering. Pain is what happens. Suffering is the story we tell about what happens. And here's the remarkable thing. Suffering always needs someone to suffer. Think about it. Can suffering exist without a sufferer? Can there be a victim without someone to be the victim? Can there be a problem without someone to have the problem? It's impossible. This is what Zen has been pointing to for centuries. Suffering requires a sense of being someone separate who can be hurt. But what if that someone is just a story? What if there's no one actually there to suffer? Let's try something right now. Think of something that's bothering you lately. Nothing too big, just some everyday frustration. Maybe work stress, or relationship tension, or worry about money. Now notice, who is experiencing this problem? You might say, I am, but look closer. Where is this I that's suffering? Can you actually find it? Or do you just find thoughts about the problem floating in awareness? Here's what's strange. When you really look for the one who's suffering, you can't find anyone home. There are thoughts about problems. There are feelings in the body. There are stories about what should or shouldn't be happening. But the actual sufferer, nowhere to be found. This isn't just a philosophical idea. It's something you can discover in real time. The next time you're upset about something, try this experiment. Instead of getting lost in the story of why you're upset, look for the one who's upset. Look for the actual entity that's being hurt or threatened or disappointed. You'll find thoughts saying, I'm upset. You'll find physical sensations of tension or discomfort. You'll find mental images of how things should be different. But the I that all this is supposedly happening to, it's like trying to grab hold of a cloud. This is why traditional Zen masters often seemed so peaceful, even in difficult circumstances. They weren't superhuman. They didn't stop feeling physical pain or noticing challenging situations, but they'd seen through the illusion of being someone separate who could be fundamentally threatened. When you realize there's no one home to be hurt, something remarkable happens. Pain can still arise. Difficult emotions can still flow through. Challenging situations can still occur. But the suffering, that extra layer of story and resistance, simply isn't there. It's like the difference between a storm happening in the sky versus a storm happening to you personally. When it's just weather, you can watch it with a kind of interested detachment. When it's happening to you, it becomes a personal crisis. But what if there was never actually a separate you for it to happen to? Think about when you're deeply absorbed in something you love, maybe reading a good book, or playing music, or watching a beautiful sunset. In those moments, where is the one who might suffer? There's just the reading, the music, the beauty. No separate self standing apart from the experience, commenting on it or worrying about it. This is your natural state. This open, aware presence with no center, no separate self to be hurt. Suffering only becomes possible when awareness contracts into the feeling of being someone specific, someone who can be threatened or disappointed or hurt. But here's the beautiful thing. That contraction is optional. It's just a habit of thinking. And like any habit, it can be seen through. The ancient saying goes, pain is inevitable, but someone has to volunteer to suffer. What this means is that life will always include physical discomfort, change, loss, and challenge. These are just part of being human. But transforming these natural experiences into personal suffering requires creating a story about being someone separate who is victimized by life. Without that story, without that sense of being a separate someone, what remains? Just life happening. Sometimes pleasant, sometimes unpleasant, always changing, but no one being personally attacked by any of it. You might be thinking, but I do feel like someone separate. I do experience myself as a person who can be hurt, and that's perfectly natural. This feeling of being a separate self is probably the most convincing illusion there is. But it's still just an appearance in awareness, like everything else. Watch how this sense of being someone separate comes and goes throughout your day. When you're worried about the future, it's very strong. When you're defending your opinions, it's front and center. When you're comparing yourself to others, it's running the whole show. But when you're simply present with what's happening right now, without commentary, where is it? This is why Zen practice is often described as just sitting. Not sitting as someone trying to get somewhere or achieve something. Just pure sitting, with no one doing the sitting. In those moments, who is there to suffer? There's just awareness being aware, presence being present. Of course, the mind will create suffering anyway. It's what minds do. They tell stories, create problems, imagine threats. But you don't have to believe every story your mind tells. You don't have to volunteer to be the main character in every drama. When suffering arises, you can simply notice it. Oh, there's a story about being hurt. There's a feeling of being wronged. There's anxiety about the future. But you don't have to become those stories. You can remain as the awareness in which they appear. This doesn't mean becoming cold or uncaring. Actually, it's the opposite. When you're not busy suffering your own personal drama, you have much more capacity for genuine compassion. You can respond to difficult situations with clarity rather than reactivity. You can help others without getting entangled in their stories of suffering. Real compassion comes from this place of no one being hurt. It's like how a loving parent can remain calm when their child is having a tantrum. They don't take the child's upset personally. They don't create their own suffering about the child's suffering. They just respond with love and wisdom. This is how you can relate to your own difficult emotions too. Instead of becoming them, you can hold them with the same kind of loving awareness. Oh, anger is arising. Sadness is flowing through. Fear is visiting. But no one is being personally attacked by any of these natural human experiences. The suffering that we're so familiar with, that sense of being a victim of life, of being someone who shouldn't have to deal with difficulty, all of that requires the illusion of being someone separate. Take away that illusion, and what remains is just life flowing naturally. Sometimes pleasant, sometimes challenging, always okay. This isn't something you need to achieve or work toward. It's your natural state right now. The awareness that's listening to these words. Is it suffering? Or is it simply present, peaceful, aware? Even if there are thoughts about problems, the awareness itself remains untouched. That untouched awareness is what you are. That's the one who was never born and will never die. That's the one for whom suffering is impossible, because there's no separate someone there to suffer. And once you really get this, you start to wonder something else. If there's no separate you to suffer, then where exactly do you end and everything else begin? Here's a question that might seem simple at first. Where do you end and the world begins? Most of us would say something like, well, I end at my skin and the world starts outside my body. But let's look at this more carefully. Right now, you're aware of sounds around you. Maybe traffic outside, or the hum of air conditioning, or birds singing. Where are those sounds happening? Are they outside of you or inside your awareness? If you can hear them, they must be somehow inside your experience, right? And what about the room you're in? You can see walls, furniture, maybe windows showing the sky outside. Where is all of that appearing? In the world, or in your awareness of the world? Because if you can see it, it must be present in your consciousness somehow. This gets interesting quickly. Everything you've ever experienced, every person you've met, every place you've been, every sunset you've watched, all of it has appeared in your awareness. You've never actually experienced anything outside of your own consciousness. You've only experienced your awareness of things. But here's where it gets really interesting. Try to find the boundary between your awareness and what appears in it. Where does awareness end and the experience begin? Can you separate the knowing from what's known? Can you find where you stop and your experience starts? It's impossible, isn't it? Awareness and its contents aren't two separate things. They're like wetness and water, or heat and fire. You can't have one without the other, and you can't separate them into distinct parts. This means that everything you call the world is actually appearing in what you are. Not in your brain, that's just another appearance in awareness. Not in your body, that's something you're aware of too. But in the open space of pure awareness itself. Most of us spend our lives feeling like we're small beings inside a big world. We imagine ourselves as tiny conscious creatures trapped inside physical bodies, looking out at a vast universe that exists independently of us. But what if it's actually the reverse? What if the entire world is appearing inside the limitless space of what you are? This isn't a metaphor or a philosophical idea. You can verify this directly right now. Everything you're aware of is appearing in awareness, and you are that awareness. So everything is literally appearing in you. The sounds around you, they're in you. The sights you can see, they're in you. Your thoughts about all of this, they're in you too. Even your sense of having a body is an experience appearing in the space of your awareness. This completely changes how you relate to everything. Instead of feeling separate from the world, you realize you're the space in which the world appears. Instead of feeling like an outsider looking in, you recognize yourself as the very medium of all experience. It's like discovering you're not a wave on the ocean. you are the ocean itself. All the waves, all the movement, all the activity is just the ocean expressing itself in countless forms. But there's never been anything separate from the ocean. It's ocean all the way down. When you really see this, something beautiful happens. The feeling of loneliness becomes impossible. How can you be lonely when everything is appearing in you? How can you be isolated when you are the very space that contains everything? You realize you're not separate from anything. You're intimately connected to everything because everything is you. This doesn't mean you become egotistical and think you're more important than others. Actually, it's the opposite. When you see that you are the awareness in which everything appears, you also see that everyone else is that same awareness. There's only one awareness appearing as many different experiences. One ocean appearing as countless waves. The person sitting next to you on the bus, their awareness being aware. The dog barking in the distance, that's awareness too, experiencing itself as a dog. The tree outside your window, awareness knowing itself as a tree. It's all one seamless, undivided reality, appearing as tremendous diversity. This is what Zen teachers mean when they talk about no separation. It's not that everything becomes one big blob. Differences still exist. You still have your unique personality, your particular body, your individual experiences. But underneath all the differences, there's this seamless continuity of being. It's like how all waves are different. Some are big, some are small, some are fast, some are slow, but they're all ocean. Similarly, all experiences are different, but they're all awareness. All beings are unique, but they're all the same essential consciousness, appearing in countless forms. Once you start to see this, you notice it everywhere. When you look into someone's eyes, you see your own awareness looking back. When you watch a sunset, you realize you're not separate from the beauty. You are the awareness in which the beauty appears. When you listen to music, there's no boundary between the listener and the listening and the music. It's all one seamless experience. This understanding naturally brings tremendous peace, because you realize you're not a small, vulnerable being in a big, threatening world. You're the limitless space in which all experiences arise and pass away. Nothing can threaten what you essentially are, because everything that could possibly threaten you is appearing in you. It also brings natural compassion. When you see that everyone else is the same awareness you are, how can you wish them harm? It would be like your left hand hurting your right hand. It makes no sense. Cruelty becomes impossible when you realize there's no one separate to be cruel to. You might wonder, but if this is true, why don't I feel this way all the time? And that's a natural question. The feeling of separation is a very convincing illusion. It's like being so absorbed in a movie that you forget you're watching a screen. You get lost in the story and temporarily forget the larger reality. But the screen is always there, whether you notice it or not. And your essential nature as limitless awareness is always here too, whether you're paying attention to it or not. The feeling of separation comes and goes, but what you are never changes. Sometimes this recognition happens gradually, like a slow dawn. Sometimes it comes as a sudden insight that changes everything in an instant. But either way, it's not something you achieve or earn. It's something you recognize was always already true. The boundaries you thought existed between you and the world were never real boundaries. They were more like lines drawn on water, conceptual divisions that seem real until you look closely. When you really look, you find that there's no place where you end and the world begins. There's just one seamless, boundless experiencing happening. This experiencing has no center and no edges. It's not located anywhere because it's what all locations appear in. It's not limited by anything because it's what all limits appear within. It's the open space of pure being in which everything arises. And you are that. Not you as a person with a name and a history and preferences, but you as the pure awareness in which the person appears. You as the limitless space in which all experiences unfold. You as the ocean of consciousness itself. This isn't something mystical or otherworldly. It's the most ordinary thing there is. It's what's happening right now as you listen to these words. Awareness, being aware of awareness, being itself, with no boundaries anywhere. When you really get this, when you see that you're not in the world but the world is in you, you start to realize something even more amazing. You've been looking for the place you belong, but how do you belong to a place that's appearing in you? There's something obvious that's easy to miss. Every question you've ever asked about where you should be has been asked from where you are. Every plan you've made to get somewhere else has been made from here. Every journey you've taken to find the right place has started from the place you were already in. Think about all the times you've wondered if you're in the right place. Maybe lying in bed thinking you should be somewhere more exciting, or sitting at work wishing you were home, or being at home wishing you were anywhere but there. But notice, where were you when you had those thoughts? You were here. You were exactly where you were. There's literally nowhere else you could have been. Even when you were thinking about being somewhere else, you were thinking those thoughts from here. This might sound ridiculously simple, but it's actually profound. You have never, not even for a single moment, been anywhere other than here. Here isn't a location. It's the very nature of being located at all. Wherever you go, there you are. And where you are is always here. When you were a child playing in your backyard, you were here. When you went to school, you were here. When you traveled to distant places, you were here. When you moved to new cities, you were here. Here, moved with you because here is what you are, not where you are. But somehow we spend so much energy trying to be somewhere else. We imagine that the right place exists somewhere other than where we currently are. We think happiness is waiting for us in a different location, a different job, a different relationship, a different moment. We keep asking how to get home while sitting in our living room. This constant seeking somewhere else creates a strange kind of suffering. We become tourists in our own lives, always looking for the next destination, instead of noticing where we already are. We develop a habit of being mentally absent from the only place we've ever been. But here's what's beautiful about this recognition. When you really see that you've never been anywhere other than here, you stop needing to get somewhere else to be okay. You realize that whatever peace or contentment or aliveness you're seeking, it has to be available here, because here is all there is. This doesn't mean you stop traveling or moving or changing your circumstances. It means you stop expecting those changes to deliver you to some fundamentally different reality. Wherever you go, you take here with you. Wherever you go, you take yourself with you, and yourself is always here. Right now, notice where you are. Not your address or the name of your city, but the immediate, intimate reality of being here. Notice that here isn't really a place at all. It's more like the space in which all places appear. It's the stage on which all experiences unfold. When you're dreaming at night, you might dream you're in Paris, or on a mountain, or in your childhood home. But where is the dreaming actually happening? In your bed, in this moment, in this awareness. Similarly, all your experiences of being somewhere are happening in the spacious here of your own awareness. This is why seeking enlightenment somewhere else, or happiness somewhere else, or peace somewhere else, never quite works. You're looking for something that can only be found where you already are. It's like searching all over the house for the glasses that are sitting on your head. The seeking itself is what keeps you from noticing what's already present. Ancient Zen teachers understood this perfectly. They didn't tell people to go somewhere special to find truth. They pointed to what was already here, already present, already available. The Buddha you seek is the mind that seeks, they would say. The place you want to reach is where you're standing. But our minds are trained to think that here isn't enough. Here is too ordinary, too familiar, too simple. We think enlightenment must be somewhere more exotic, more special, more different from our everyday experience. We imagine awakening as a journey to a distant destination, rather than a recognition of where we've always been. This is one of the most beautiful paradoxes of spiritual life. The ultimate destination is where you started. The treasure you seek is buried in your own backyard. The home you're trying to find is the place you never left. All seeking ends in the recognition that you were already here all along. When this really sinks in, something relaxes. The constant background tension of needing to be somewhere else dissolves. The feeling that you're missing out on life by being where you are disappears. You realize that wherever life is happening, it's happening here. Wherever the party is, it's here. Wherever the action is, it's here. This doesn't make you passive or unmotivated. You can still have preferences about your circumstances. You can still work to improve your situation or explore new places. But you do it from a place of fullness rather than emptiness, from presence rather than absence, from here rather than from the imaginary somewhere else. People sometimes worry that accepting where they are means giving up on their dreams. But it's actually the opposite. When you're fully here, you have access to your real intelligence, your genuine intuition, your authentic desires. When you're always mentally elsewhere, you're operating from fantasy and dissatisfaction. Real change comes from real presence, not from imaginary futures. Look at how much mental energy goes into being somewhere else. Thinking about the past, planning the future, imagining different circumstances, wishing things were different. All of that thinking is happening here, now, in this awareness. but it creates the illusion of being somewhere else, of living a life that's always one step removed from reality. When you bring all that scattered attention back to here, something miraculous happens. Life becomes vivid again. Colors seem brighter, sounds seem clearer, everything feels more alive. You realize you've been missing the movie of your own life because you were too busy thinking about other movies you could be watching. Here is not a consolation prize. It's not what you settle for when you can't get somewhere better. Here is the only place where life actually happens. Here is where love is felt, where beauty is seen, where peace is found. Here is where you breathe, where your heart beats, where awareness shines. And here is infinitely spacious. It's not cramped or limiting. It includes everything, all places, all times, all possibilities. When you're really here, you're everywhere. When you're really present, you're eternal. When you're really where you are, you're exactly where you belong. This recognition changes how you relate to restlessness. Instead of seeing it as a sign that you need to go somewhere else, you see it as energy looking for direction right here. Instead of interpreting dissatisfaction as evidence that you're in the wrong place, you recognize it as an invitation to be more fully in the place you are. The spiritual search often begins with the feeling that you're in the wrong place, living the wrong life, being the wrong person. But it ends with the recognition that there is no wrong place to be, because there's only one place you can be. Here, always here, eternally here. This here is not static or boring. It's the most dynamic, creative, alive space there is. It's where new moments are born every instant. It's where the future becomes the present becomes the past. It's where the infinite expresses itself as the particular, where eternity touches time. When you stop trying to escape from here, you discover that here is already the escape you were looking for. When you stop trying to find the right place, you realize you're already in it. When you stop asking how to get home, you notice you never left. The only place you've ever been is here. The only place you'll ever be is here. The only place where anything has ever happened or ever will happen is here. And here, it turns out, is exactly where you're supposed to be. Once you really settle into this truth, you might notice something else. All your searching for meaning and purpose has been happening here too, which makes you wonder, what if the purpose you've been seeking is already perfectly present in the place you've never left? Here's something you might have noticed about trees. They don't spend time wondering why they exist. They don't have existential crises about their purpose in life. They just grow. They reach toward the sunlight, extend their roots into the earth, change with the seasons. They live with a kind of effortless spontaneity that seems completely natural. And here's what's interesting. They're perfectly fulfilled doing this, not because they've figured out their cosmic purpose, but because they're simply being what they are. No second guessing, no comparing themselves to other trees, no wondering if they should be doing something more important. Just pure natural expression. What if you could live like that? What if you could stop asking, "What's my purpose?" and start noticing what's already flowing through you? What if the meaning you've been searching for is not something you need to find, but something you need to stop interfering with? Most of us spend enormous amounts of energy trying to figure out why we're here. We read books about finding our life purpose. We take personality tests and career assessments. We meditate on our calling, analyze our gifts, search for our mission. And often, the more we search, the more confused we become. But what if the search itself is what's creating the confusion? What if asking, "What's my purpose?" is like asking, "What's the point of breathing?" Some things don't need a point beyond themselves. Some things are their own purpose. Right now, your heart is beating. It doesn't beat in order to accomplish some goal. It beats because that's what hearts do. It's spontaneous, natural, perfect. Your heart doesn't need to understand its purpose to fulfill it perfectly. Similarly, you're breathing without thinking about it. Your body temperature is regulating itself. Your cells are renewing themselves. Your awareness is naturally present and alert. All of this is happening without any effort or intention on your part. Life is living itself through you with incredible intelligence and precision. What if your whole existence is like that? What if you don't need to figure out your purpose because you're already fulfilling it perfectly, just by being alive? What if the universe is expressing itself through you in exactly the way it needs to, without any help from your thinking mind? This doesn't mean becoming passive or lazy. Trees aren't passive. They're incredibly active, growing and adapting and responding to their environment. But their activity comes from their nature, not from a mental concept of what they should be doing. They trust the intelligence that's already operating through them. When you stop trying to figure out your purpose and start trusting the purpose that's already operating through you, something remarkable happens. You begin to notice a natural flow in your life. Certain things feel effortless and energizing. Certain directions feel obvious and right, not because you've analyzed them, but because they align with what wants to happen naturally. Maybe you find yourself drawn to help people in difficulty. Maybe you naturally create beauty wherever you go. Maybe you have a gift for bringing out the best in others, or for solving complex problems, or for making people laugh. These aren't things you decided to do. They're things that happen through you when you're not trying to be someone else. This natural expression is your purpose, not a grand mission statement written in the sky, but the simple, spontaneous way life moves through your particular form. It's as natural as a river flowing downhill or a flower turning toward the sun. It doesn't need justification or explanation. It just needs permission to happen. But often we interfere with this natural flow. We think our spontaneous interests aren't important enough. We compare our natural gifts to what society says is valuable. We override our intuitive direction with what we think we should be doing. We turn away from what feels alive and easy in favor of what seems more serious or worthwhile. This is like a tree trying to grow in a different direction because it thinks it should be more like the oak tree next to it. It creates tremendous strain and usually doesn't work very well. When you fight against your nature, you exhaust yourself trying to be something you're not. When you align with your nature, you have access to an endless source of energy and creativity. The ancient Zen understanding is that everything in existence is already perfect exactly as it is. Not perfect in the sense that nothing ever changes or improves, but perfect in the sense that everything is exactly what it needs to be in this moment, including you, including your life as it is right now. This doesn't mean you stop growing or learning or changing. It means you do those things from a place of wholeness rather than from a place of feeling broken or incomplete. You evolve naturally, like a tree growing new branches, rather than forcing yourself to become something different. When you really trust this, you can relax the exhausting effort of trying to become someone worthy of existence. You're already worthy. Your existence itself is your worthiness. You don't need to earn your place here. You're here, which means you belong here. This trust allows your natural gifts to emerge. Instead of trying to develop talents you think you should have, you can nurture the ones that are already flowing through you. Instead of forcing yourself toward goals that look impressive, you can follow the direction that feels genuinely alive. Instead of working against yourself, you can work with yourself. Of course, this requires a certain kind of courage. It means trusting that your natural expression is valuable, even if it doesn't look like what everyone else is doing. It means believing that the universe knows what it's doing when it expresses itself through your particular form. It means having faith in the intelligence that's already operating through you. But this isn't blind faith. You can test it. Notice what happens when you follow your genuine interests versus when you force yourself to do what you think you should do. Notice the difference in energy, enthusiasm, and effectiveness. Notice how things tend to flow more smoothly when you're aligned with your nature. This alignment isn't always easy to recognize at first. We've been trained to distrust our natural impulses, to think that anything that comes easily can't be valuable. We've learned to look outside ourselves for direction rather than inside. We've forgotten how to recognize our own authentic voice among all the voices telling us who we should be. But that authentic voice is still there. It's the one that knows immediately what feels right and what feels forced. It's the one that recognizes truth when it hears it. It's the one that feels energized by certain activities and drained by others. It's the wisdom of your own being, trying to guide you toward your most natural expression. When you start listening to this voice and following its guidance, you discover something amazing. Your life becomes an expression of who you are, rather than an attempt to become who you think you should be. Work becomes more like play. Relationships become more authentic. Creativity flows more easily. Everything feels more alive because you're living from your aliveness rather than from your ideas about life. This is what Zen teachers mean when they talk about Wu Wei, effortless action. It's not the absence of action, but action that flows from your essential nature rather than from mental effort. It's like being a river that knows exactly how to flow around rocks without thinking about it. It's natural, spontaneous, and perfectly appropriate to each moment. The purpose you've been seeking isn't something you need to create or discover. It's something you need to allow. It's already operating through you in countless ways, in your natural compassion, your curiosity, your creativity, your capacity to love and be loved. You don't need to add anything to this or make it more important than it is. Your purpose is as simple and as profound as a tree growing toward the light. It's the natural expression of life through your unique form. It doesn't need to save the world or change history or impress anyone. It just needs to be authentic to what you are. And when you live this way, something beautiful happens. Not only do you feel more alive and fulfilled, but you naturally contribute to the well-being of everything around you. Because when anyone expresses their authentic nature, it adds something unique and valuable to the whole. Your genuine expression is your gift to existence. The tree doesn't grow for itself alone. Its growth creates oxygen, provides shelter, adds beauty to the landscape. But it doesn't think about these benefits. They happen naturally as a result of the tree being truly itself. Your authentic expression works the same way, blessing everything around you without effort or intention. This is the purpose that needs no purpose. Simply being what you are, as fully and authentically as possible. Trusting the intelligence that brought you into existence to guide your expression while you're here. And discovering that this simple authenticity is more meaningful than any purpose you could invent. There's something almost comical about the spiritual search when you really look at it. People spend years meditating to find peace, but they can only meditate because there's already a peaceful awareness present. They seek enlightenment, but they can only seek because there's already an awakened intelligence doing the seeking. They look for their true self, but they can only look because their true self is already present to do the looking. It's like using a flashlight to search for a flashlight in a dark room. The very fact that you can search means you already have what you're looking for. But somehow, this becomes the most overlooked, obvious thing in the world. Most spiritual seeking begins with a feeling that something is missing. You feel incomplete, unfulfilled, not quite right somehow. So naturally, you start looking for what's missing. You read books about enlightenment, attend workshops about awakening, practice techniques for finding your true nature. And all of this seeking reinforces the fundamental assumption that what you're looking for is somewhere else, in some other state, in some future moment. But here's the thing. What is it that wants to become enlightened? What is it that seeks awakening? What is it that's looking for its true nature? It's awareness itself. It's consciousness. It's the very thing you're trying to find. You're using Buddha nature to seek Buddha nature. You're using enlightened awareness to search for enlightenment. You're using your true self to look for your true self. It's the ultimate case of not being able to see the forest for the trees, except, in this case, you can't see the seer for the seeking. This creates a strange kind of spiritual suffering. The more you seek, the more convinced you become that you don't have what you're looking for. The more techniques you practice, the more complex and distant the goal seems. The more you learn about enlightenment, the more unenlightened you feel. The seeking itself becomes proof that you're not there yet. But what if not there yet is just a story? What if the one who feels unenlightened is just a character appearing in enlightened awareness? What if the seeker is just a temporary costume worn by what you're seeking? Right now, something is aware of these words. Something is present and alert and conscious. That something isn't seeking anything. It's already complete, already awake, already here. The seeking is just something that appears in it, like clouds appearing in an empty sky. The sky doesn't need to seek itself. It already is itself. This awareness that you are doesn't lack anything. It's not partial or incomplete or in need of improvement. It doesn't have a spiritual practice or a path to follow. It doesn't meditate. Meditation happens in it. It doesn't seek enlightenment. Enlightenment is its very nature. When this really lands, it can be initially disorienting, because it means that everything you've been trying to achieve, you already are. Every state you've been trying to reach, you're already in. Every realization you've been hoping for, you already have. The spiritual journey doesn't lead anywhere. It just leads you back to where you never left. This doesn't invalidate spiritual practice. Meditation, prayer, yoga, contemplation, all of these can be beautiful expressions of your true nature, but they work not by getting you somewhere else, but by helping you recognize what's already here. They're like cleaning a mirror that was never actually dirty. The mirror doesn't become more mirror-like through cleaning. It just recognizes its natural clarity. The problem comes when we turn practice into seeking. When we use meditation to try to become peaceful, instead of recognizing the peace in which meditation happens. When we use prayer to try to connect with the divine, instead of recognizing the divine nature of the one who prays. When we use spiritual techniques to try to find ourselves, instead of recognizing the self that's using the techniques. This seeking energy is like a dog chasing its own tail. The faster it runs, the faster the tail seems to move away. The more effort it puts in, the more elusive the goal becomes. But if the dog would just stop and look, it would realize the tail was attached to it all along. The seeker and the sought are not two different things. You might ask, but if I'm already enlightened, why don't I feel enlightened? And that's a beautiful question, because it reveals the assumption that enlightenment is a feeling. But what if enlightenment is not a particular state or experience? What if it's the awareness in which all states and experiences appear? Sometimes that awareness knows itself through feelings of peace and bliss. Sometimes it knows itself through feelings of confusion or sadness. Sometimes it knows itself through clarity, sometimes through uncertainty. But the awareness itself, that which knows all these different experiences, is unchanged by any of them. It's like a movie screen that's equally present whether it's showing a comedy or a tragedy. Your enlightened nature doesn't depend on having enlightened experiences. It's what makes all experiences possible. It's the light by which everything is seen, the space in which everything appears, the knowing through which everything is known. And that's what you are right now, in this very moment, regardless of what you're experiencing. This understanding can bring tremendous relief, because it means you can stop the exhausting project of trying to become someone different. You can stop judging your current experience as evidence of how far you have to go. You can stop postponing your happiness until you reach some imaginary spiritual destination. You can rest in what you already are. But it can also bring up resistance, because if you're already what you're seeking, then what's the point of the spiritual path? What's the point of growth or learning or practice? This resistance usually comes from the ego mind, which has built its whole identity around being the seeker, the one who's working towards something better. The ego mind loves the spiritual search because it gives it a sense of purpose and importance. It can feel special for being on a spiritual path. It can measure its progress and compare itself to others. It can accumulate spiritual experiences and insights like trophies. The search gives it something to do, somewhere to go, someone to become. But your true nature doesn't need any of that. It's not trying to get anywhere or become anything or achieve any state. It's simply present, aware, and at peace with whatever is happening. It's like water that naturally flows downhill without effort or agenda. It's spontaneous, effortless, and perfectly appropriate to each moment. When you recognize this, practice becomes play rather than work. You meditate not to get somewhere, but for the joy of resting in your natural state. You study not to accumulate knowledge, but to recognize the wisdom you already are. You serve others not to earn spiritual points, but because love naturally flows when you're not blocking it. This shift from seeking to being can happen gradually or suddenly. Sometimes it's a slow recognition that dawns over months or years. Sometimes it's an instant seeing that changes everything immediately. But either way, it's not really a change at all. It's a recognition of what was always already true. The ancient Zen saying goes, "You are perfect as you are, and you could use a little improvement." What this points to is that your essential nature is already complete and whole, but the expression of that nature through your human life can always become more clear, more authentic, more aligned. You don't practice to become enlightened. You practice as enlightenment expressing itself. This makes spiritual life much more relaxed and natural. Instead of striving to reach some distant goal, you're simply polishing the expression of what you already are. Instead of trying to become worthy of love, you're recognizing that you are love itself, temporarily forgetting its nature. Instead of seeking peace, you're noticing the peace that seeking appears in. The search for enlightenment is enlightenment looking for itself. The desire for awakening is awakening, recognizing its own nature. The spiritual path is spirit, exploring its own depths through the adventure of apparent separation and return. But there was never actually any separation, and there's nowhere to return to. You are what you've been looking for. You have what you've been seeking. You are where you've been trying to go. The Buddha nature that all the books talk about, that's what's reading the books. The enlightened awareness that all the teachers point to, that's what's listening to the teachers. The true self that all the practices reveal, that's what's doing the practices. This doesn't mean you should stop practicing or learning or growing. It means you can do all of those things from a place of fullness rather than emptiness, from being rather than becoming, from love rather than lack. When you know you already are what you're seeking, the seeking becomes a celebration rather than a desperate search. And when this really settles in, when you stop trying to become what you already are, something interesting happens. You start to notice that the peace you were seeking was never actually disturbed. Here's something you can test right now. Think of the most stressful situation in your life at the moment. Really bring it to mind. The worry, the tension, the overwhelming feeling that comes with it. Now notice, what is aware of this stress? There's the stressful thought or feeling itself. And then there's the awareness that knows the stress is there. That awareness, is it stressed? Or is it calmly observing the stress, like a clear sky watching clouds pass through? This is one of the most liberating discoveries you can make. Even in your most chaotic moments, there's something in you that remains completely undisturbed. Your thoughts might be racing, your emotions might be intense, your body might be tense. But the awareness in which all of this appears, that's as peaceful as it's ever been. It's like being in a house during a thunderstorm. The storm might be loud and dramatic outside, but inside, there's a room that remains perfectly quiet. You might forget about that quiet room when you're focused on the storm, but it's always there, always available, always unchanged by whatever weather is passing through. Most of us have been taught to think that peace is something we need to create or achieve. We imagine it as a state we need to get into through meditation or relaxation techniques. We think of it as the opposite of stress, something that exists only when problems are absent. But what if peace is actually the background of all experience? Think about the ocean for a moment. On the surface, there might be enormous waves, storms and turbulence and dramatic movement. But deep underneath, there's a vast stillness that's completely unaffected by what's happening on the surface. The waves are real, but they don't disturb the deeper ocean. They're just temporary expressions of the same water. Your awareness works the same way. Thoughts and emotions and sensations arise like waves on the surface. Some are pleasant, some are unpleasant, some are dramatic, some are subtle, but they all arise in the same, deeper stillness. They're all temporary expressions of the same aware presence. This means that even your most disturbing thoughts are floating in something completely undisturbed. Even your deepest anxiety is arising in perfect peace. Even your most intense emotions are appearing in unshakable stillness. The disturbance never actually touches what you fundamentally are. You can verify this right now. Notice that you're aware of your thoughts. But the awareness itself, is it thinking? Notice that you're aware of sounds around you. But the awareness itself, is it making noise? Notice that you're aware of any tension in your body. But the awareness itself, is it tense? What you'll find is that awareness is like space. Things move through space, but space itself is never disturbed by what moves through it. A hurricane can rage through the sky, but the sky remains perfectly clear and open. Similarly, intense experiences can move through awareness, but awareness itself remains perfectly peaceful and open. This understanding changes everything about how you relate to difficult experiences. Instead of trying to get rid of stress or anxiety or sadness, you can simply rest in the awareness that's observing them. Instead of fighting against challenging emotions, you can allow them to be there while you remain anchored in the peace that's always present. It's like learning that you don't have to calm the waves to access the deep ocean. You just have to remember to dive below the surface. The peace was never actually disturbed. You just got caught up in the surface activity and forgot about the depths. But this isn't a practice or a technique you need to master. It's not something you do, it's something you notice. The peace is already here. The stillness is already present. You don't create it, you simply recognize it. Sometimes this recognition happens naturally during meditation. You might notice that beneath all the mental chatter, there's a profound silence. Not the absence of sound, but the space in which all sounds appear. Not emptiness, but fullness, so complete it appears empty. This is your natural state, temporarily obscured by focus on surface activity. But you don't need to be meditating to access this. Right now, in the middle of whatever you're doing, this peace is available. In the middle of a busy day, it's here. In the middle of a difficult conversation, it's here. In the middle of worry or fear or anger, it's here. Unchanging, unshakable, always present. This is why ancient Zen masters could remain so calm in challenging circumstances. Not because they didn't experience difficulties, but because they knew how to rest in the awareness that was observing the difficulties. They had discovered the eye of the hurricane, the place of perfect stillness that exists at the center of any storm. When you really understand this, it brings tremendous relief, because you realize you don't have to solve all your problems to be at peace. You don't have to eliminate all stress from your life to access tranquility. You don't have to wait for perfect circumstances to feel the deep okayness that's always available. The peace was never dependent on your circumstances being peaceful. It was never conditional on your thoughts being calm or your emotions being pleasant. It's like the sun that shines equally on sunny days and cloudy days. The clouds might block your view of the sun, but they never actually diminish its light. This peaceful awareness is your true home. It's where you can always return, no matter how far you seem to wander into stress or confusion. It's the one place in your experience that never changes, never gets damaged, never needs repair. It's like having a sanctuary that you carry with you wherever you go. But most of us spend our time focused on the waves and forget about the ocean. We get so absorbed in the content of our experience that we lose sight of the context. We become hypnotized by the movie and forget we're watching a screen. We get caught up in the weather and forget about the sky that contains it all. This forgetting is natural and human. It's part of how consciousness explores itself through apparent separation from its own nature. But the remembering is always available. In any moment, you can shift your attention from what you're aware of to the awareness itself. From the experience to the experiencer. From the waves to the ocean. When you do this, you might be surprised by what you find. The awareness that's been here all along is not only peaceful, it's also vast, open, and intimately loving. It's not indifferent to your experience, but it's not threatened by it either. It holds everything with perfect acceptance, like a mother holding a crying child. This loving awareness doesn't try to fix or change anything. It simply allows everything to be as it is, while remaining completely at peace. It's the most natural thing in the world, yet we somehow manage to overlook it most of the time. It's like fish looking for water while swimming in the ocean. The more you rest in this awareness, the more you realize it's not just peaceful, it's indestructible. Nothing that happens in your life can damage or diminish it. Loss, disappointment, physical pain, emotional turbulence, all of these might arise, but they can't touch the essential peace of what you are. This doesn't make you indifferent to life's challenges. You still care about things, still work to improve difficult situations, still feel compassion for suffering. But you do all of this from the unshakable ground of your own peace, rather than from the shifting sand of reactive emotions. You respond rather than react, because you're anchored in something that can't be disturbed. Over time, this becomes your default way of being. Instead of getting pulled into every drama, you naturally rest in the awareness that's watching the drama. Instead of identifying with every thought and feeling that passes through, you remain as the open space in which they appear. You become like the sky, vast, open, and undisturbed by whatever weather moves through. This is not a special achievement or an advanced spiritual state. It's your natural condition, temporarily overlooked. The peace that was never disturbed is not something you need to earn or develop. It's something you need to stop overlooking. It's been here all along, patiently waiting for you to notice. And once you really see this, once you recognize the unshakable peace that's always been your true nature, you start to wonder about all those questions that used to seem so important. There are some questions that can't be answered with words, not because they're too complex or mysterious, but because the answer is bigger than any explanation could contain. It's like trying to describe the color blue to someone who's never seen color. No amount of words will give them the actual experience. Zen masters discovered this centuries ago. They found that the most important insights about life couldn't be transmitted through normal teaching methods. You can't think your way to understanding what you are. You can't analyze your way to peace. You can't logic your way to enlightenment. These things have to be directly recognized, like suddenly seeing a friend's face in a crowd. So they developed a different kind of question called a koan. These weren't meant to be solved with thinking. They were meant to exhaust thinking, to show its limits, to point beyond logic, to direct understanding. They're like puzzles that can only be solved by giving up trying to solve them. The most famous one is probably this: what is the sound of one hand clapping? Your mind immediately tries to figure it out. Maybe it's silence. Maybe it's the whoosh of air. Maybe it's a trick question. But all of these are still thinking, still trying to grasp something that can't be grasped with concepts. The real answer isn't a thought at all. It's the recognition of what's listening to the question. It's the awareness that hears both sound and silence. It's the space in which clapping and not clapping both appear. When you stop trying to solve it and simply listen, you realize you are the answer. Here's another classic. Show me your original face before your parents were born. Again, the mind wants to make this into a logical puzzle. But it's not asking for information. It's asking for recognition. What were you before any story began? What are you right now, underneath all the stories? These questions work by creating a kind of productive confusion. They're designed to short-circuit the normal thinking process. When your mind can't find a logical answer, it eventually gives up. And in that giving up, something else can be noticed. The awareness that was trying to think its way through the problem. It's like being in a maze and suddenly realizing you can simply step outside the maze altogether. The problem isn't solved. It's dissolved. The question doesn't get answered. It disappears into understanding. You don't figure out what you are. You recognize what you've always been. This is why paradox is so powerful as a teaching tool. Logic likes things to be either this or that, black or white, true or false. But reality is often both and neither. You are both someone and no one, both here and everywhere, both seeking and already found. Paradox opens doors that logic keeps locked. When you really meet a koan, something strange happens. Your usual way of understanding the world stops working. You can't rely on knowledge or analysis or clever thinking. You have to become like a child again, open and curious and willing to not know. And in that not knowing, a different kind of knowing becomes possible. This different knowing doesn't come through the mind. It's more like recognition than learning. Like suddenly seeing that what you thought was a stranger is actually someone you've known your whole life. There's no new information, but everything changes. You don't gain something, you realize you never lost it. The best answers to the deepest questions are wordless. They leave you speechless, not because you're confused, but because you're complete. Words suddenly seem unnecessary. It's like trying to describe water to the ocean. The ocean doesn't need the description. It is the water. This speechlessness is actually the goal. When understanding is complete, there's nothing left to say about it. It's like when you're deeply in love. Words feel clumsy and inadequate compared to the actual feeling. The experience is so full that language feels empty by comparison. Ancient Zen students would sometimes spend years working with a single koan, not because it was intellectually complex, but because it required a fundamental shift in how they approached reality. They had to learn to meet life directly rather than through the filter of concepts. They had to discover the difference between knowing about something and being something. This shift can happen suddenly or gradually. Sometimes it's like a lightning flash that illuminates everything instantly. Sometimes it's like a slow dawn that gradually reveals what was always there. But either way, it's not really a change at all. It's a recognition of what was never hidden. You don't have to work with formal koans to experience this. Life itself is constantly presenting you with the same fundamental question: what are you? Every moment is asking you to look beyond your ideas about yourself and recognize what's actually here. Every experience is inviting you to see through the story to the storyteller. The questions that matter most aren't the ones you can Google. They're the ones that point you back to yourself. Who am I really? What is this moment? Where does awareness begin and end? What is it that never changes through all the changes? These questions don't have answers. They have recognitions. When you stop trying to answer them and start living them, something beautiful happens. The questions begin to answer themselves, not through words or concepts, but through direct knowing. You become the answer you were seeking. You realize you always were the answer you were seeking. This is why Zen teachers sometimes respond to questions with silence, or with seemingly nonsensical answers, or even with physical gestures. They're not being difficult or cryptic. They're pointing to what can't be captured in words. They're showing you that the real answer is closer than any explanation could bring you. The sound of one hand clapping is the sound of this moment, exactly as it is. Your original face before your parents were born is the awareness that's reading these words right now. The answer to every spiritual question is the one who's asking the question. Not the person with a name and a history, but the pure awareness in which the person appears. When this recognition happens, all questions don't get answered. They become irrelevant. It's like asking what color Wednesday is or how much space weighs. The questions dissolve because they were based on assumptions that turn out to be incorrect. You were asking the wrong question all along. You were asking what you are instead of recognizing that you are. This doesn't mean becoming anti-intellectual or dismissing the value of thinking. Thinking is a beautiful function of awareness, like waves are a beautiful expression of the ocean. But you don't mistake the waves for the ocean, and you don't mistake thoughts for what you are. You recognize both as temporary expressions of something deeper and more fundamental. The deepest understanding is always wordless, like a mother's love for her child, or the beauty of a sunset, or the peace of deep sleep. You know it completely, but you can't explain it completely. It has to be experienced directly. It has to be lived rather than learned. And the most beautiful thing about this wordless understanding is that once you have it, you realize it was never hidden. You don't gain enlightenment. You recognize the enlightenment you've always been. You don't find peace. You notice the peace you've never lost. You don't become aware. You see that you are awareness itself. When questions dissolve into understanding like this, you discover something remarkable. The very experiences that used to confuse you now become your teachers. Here's something interesting that happens when you stop trying so hard to learn. Life starts teaching you directly. Not through books or teachers or formal lessons, but through the simple experiences that are happening right now. Every moment becomes a classroom, and the teacher is existence itself. Most of us have been trained to think that learning requires a student and a teacher. Someone who knows something teaches someone who doesn't know it. But what if there's a different kind of learning that doesn't work this way? What if wisdom can arise directly from paying attention to what's actually happening? When you're fully present with any experience, it reveals something about the nature of reality. The feeling of sadness teaches you about the spaciousness that contains all emotions. The sound of rain teaches you about the awareness that hears everything. The sensation of breathing teaches you about the life force that animates everything. No formal teacher required, just openness to what's here. This is completely different from how we usually approach learning. Normally, we think we need to accumulate information and then apply it to our lives. We read about peace and then try to create peaceful experiences. We study enlightenment and then attempt to become enlightened. But this approach keeps us one step removed from direct understanding. What if instead you let your actual experiences teach you what they know? What if you approached each moment with the curiosity of a scientist discovering something for the first time? What if you stopped overlaying your concepts onto reality and started letting reality show you what it actually is? This requires a fundamental shift in how you see yourself. Instead of being someone who needs to learn about life, you become someone who lets life express its wisdom through you. Instead of trying to figure everything out, you become available to be taught by everything. Instead of having answers, you become an open question that life can respond to. When you make this shift, something remarkable happens. Every experience becomes meaningful, not because you make it meaningful, but because you allow its inherent meaning to reveal itself. A traffic jam teaches you about patience and acceptance. A difficult conversation teaches you about listening and compassion. Even physical pain teaches you about the awareness that remains untouched by discomfort. This is what the old Zen saying means. Every moment is a Dharma talk given by existence itself. Dharma means truth or teaching. So every moment is truth, teaching you about truth. Every experience is reality, showing you what reality is. Every sensation, every thought, every emotion is a direct transmission of wisdom. But you have to be present to receive this teaching. When you're lost in stories about what's happening, you miss what's actually happening. When you're busy judging your experience as good or bad, you miss the deeper instruction it contains. When you're trying to change what's arising, you miss what it's trying to show you. The curriculum that life offers is perfectly personalized. Whatever you most need to understand will keep appearing in your experience until you get it. If you need to learn about surrender, situations requiring surrender will present themselves. If you need to understand love, opportunities to give and receive love will arise. If you need to discover your true nature, everything will conspire to show you what you are. This doesn't mean that life is deliberately trying to teach you lessons. It's more like water naturally flowing downhill. Life naturally reveals its wisdom to anyone who's open to seeing it. The teaching is built into the very fabric of experience itself. You don't have to look for it. You just have to stop looking away from it. Sometimes the teaching is gentle and obvious. A beautiful sunset might reveal the peace that's always available. A child's laughter might show you the joy that exists beneath all your concerns. A moment of stillness might reveal the spacious awareness you actually are. Sometimes the teaching is more challenging. Loss might teach you about the impermanence of all forms and the permanence of what you essentially are. Illness might show you the difference between your body and the awareness that observes the body. Conflict might reveal places where you're still identified with being a separate someone who can be threatened. But whether gentle or challenging, every experience contains the same fundamental teaching. You are the awareness in which everything appears. Sometimes this teaching comes through pleasant experiences that help you relax into your true nature. Sometimes it comes through difficult experiences that strip away false identifications. But it's always the same essential recognition being revealed in different ways. The beautiful thing about this kind of learning is that it never stops. Every day brings new opportunities to recognize what you are. Every interaction offers a chance to see through the illusion of separation. Every challenge presents an invitation to rest in the unchanging awareness that you've always been. And you don't need any special qualifications to receive this teaching. You don't need to be spiritual or educated or naturally wise. You just need to be present and open. Life will do the rest. It's like having a master teacher who's always available and never charges tuition. This changes how you relate to difficult experiences. Instead of seeing them as problems to solve or avoid, you can see them as especially powerful teachers. The experiences that challenge you most are often the ones with the most to offer. They're like intensive courses in recognizing what can't be disturbed by any disturbance. Of course, this doesn't mean seeking out difficult experiences or becoming attached to suffering. It means meeting whatever arises with the curiosity to see what it has to show you. It means asking not, "How can I get rid of this?" but, "What is this here to teach me?" And often, what it's here to teach you is that you are bigger than whatever is happening to you. When you really get this, when you see that life itself is your teacher, something profound shifts. You stop feeling like a victim of circumstances and start feeling like a student of reality. You stop needing life to be different and start appreciating how perfectly it's designed to show you what you need to see. This doesn't make you passive or accepting of harmful situations. You can still work to improve things, set boundaries, and make changes. But you do it from wisdom rather than reactivity, from love rather than fear, from wholeness rather than the feeling that something is missing. You respond to life's teachings by becoming more of what you truly are. The curriculum is always perfectly calibrated to your current capacity. You never get more than you can handle, though you might get exactly as much as you can handle. And as your understanding deepens, the teachings become more subtle and refined. What once required dramatic experiences to get your attention can now be received through the slightest shift in awareness. Eventually, you realize that the teacher and the student are not two different things. Life teaching you is you teaching yourself. Reality showing you its nature is your own nature, recognizing itself. The awareness learning about awareness is awareness coming to know itself more fully. The whole process is consciousness exploring its own depths through the adventure of apparent individuality. This recognition brings tremendous trust. You begin to see that everything that happens is somehow in service of awakening. Not in a forced or contrived way, but in the most natural way possible. Like a river that naturally flows toward the ocean, life naturally flows toward the recognition of what it actually is. And once you see this flow, once you recognize that everything is perfectly designed to reveal the truth of what you are, you realize something amazing about your journey. There's actually nowhere to go and nothing to achieve, because you're already exactly where this pathless path leads. There's something beautifully ridiculous about the spiritual search when you really look at it. People spend decades trying to get to a place they've never left. They follow elaborate paths to find what they already are. They seek teachers who can show them what's been staring them in the face all along. It's like spending years looking for your glasses while they're sitting on your head. Every spiritual tradition talks about this journey. The path to enlightenment, the way to God, the road to awakening. And these paths are beautiful and valuable in their own way. But here's what's funny. They all lead to the same place. Right here. Right where you started. Right where you are this very moment. It's like taking an elaborate trip around the world, only to discover that the treasure you were seeking was buried in your own backyard. The journey isn't wasted. You learn a lot along the way. But the destination was never actually distant. It was never actually anywhere else. This is why so many spiritual paths seem to go in circles. You start with meditation to find peace, and eventually realize that peace is what's aware of the meditation. You practice surrender to let go of control and discover that what you really are was never actually in control. You seek to transcend the ego, only to find that there was never really an ego there to transcend. The circles aren't a problem with the path. The circles are the point. Every path eventually leads you back to the center. And you are the center. You've always been the center. The paths just help you remember this obvious fact that somehow got forgotten. It's like a dog chasing its tail in the most cosmic way possible. Round and round you go, seeking what you already have, trying to become what you already are, attempting to reach what you've never left. And finally, if you're lucky, you just stop and look. And there it is. There you are, right where you've always been. Ancient Zen teachers used to talk about the gateless gate. This isn't a riddle, it's a perfect description of spiritual seeking. You spend enormous energy trying to pass through a gate that doesn't exist to get to a place you've never left. The gate is gateless because there was never any separation between where you are and where you want to be. But the mind loves the idea of a journey. It gives the ego something to do, somewhere to go, someone to become. The mind can make progress on a journey. It can measure advancement, compare itself to others, feel proud of how far it's come. But what the mind is seeking is not a place it can get to through effort. What you're looking for is what's doing the looking. What you're trying to reach is what's doing the reaching. What you want to become is what's wanting to become. The seeker and the sought are not two different things. They're like the wave looking for the ocean while being made entirely of ocean water. This recognition usually comes as a shock. After years of spiritual effort, you suddenly realize there was nowhere to go. After countless practices and techniques, you see that what you were practicing was already perfect. After reading hundreds of books about enlightenment, you discover that the one reading the books was already enlightened. It's not that the journey was pointless. The journey was necessary to exhaust the illusion that there needed to be a journey. You had to seek until you realized seeking was keeping you from finding. You had to try to get somewhere until you recognized you were already there. You had to attempt to become someone until you saw that you already were everything. This is why spiritual awakening is often described as coming home. Not because you travel to a new location, but because you recognize the place you've always been. Like Dorothy in Oz, clicking her heels and realizing she could have gone home any time. The power was always there. The way was always open. Home was always here. But why does it take so long to see something so obvious? Because what you're looking for is too close to see. It's like trying to see your own eyes without a mirror. You are what you're looking for, so you can't step back far enough to see it as an object. You can only be it, which you already are. The spiritual path is really a process of elimination. You try this approach and that technique, this teaching and that practice. Gradually, you eliminate everything that you're not. You're not your thoughts. Those come and go. You're not your emotions. Those change constantly. You're not your body that ages and transforms. You're not your experiences. Those are temporary. What remains when everything else is eliminated? What remains is what was there before you started seeking. What remains is what was present during all the seeking. What remains is what's here now, that the seeking has ended. Pure awareness, consciousness itself, the space in which everything appears. And that's what you are. This doesn't mean you stop growing or learning or exploring. It means you do all of these things from wholeness rather than from lack. You explore not because something is missing, but because exploration is what wholeness naturally does. You learn not to become complete, but as an expression of the completeness you already are. The journey transforms from seeking to celebrating. Instead of trying to get somewhere, you appreciate where you are. Instead of working toward enlightenment, you express the enlightenment that you are. Instead of becoming spiritual, you recognize the spirit that you've always been. This shift can be immediate or gradual. Sometimes it happens like a sudden recognition. Oh my God, I'm already home. Sometimes it's more like a slow dawn, where you gradually recognize the familiar landscape of your own being. But either way, it's not a change of location. It's a change of perspective about the location you've never left. When this recognition stabilizes, the whole idea of a spiritual path becomes wonderfully obsolete. Not because you've completed the path, but because you've seen through the need for one. You realize you were like someone frantically digging a hole to find the ground they were already standing on. The gateless gate was always open because there was never anything to keep out or let in. The path was pathless because there was never any distance to travel. The journey was to nowhere because everywhere you could possibly go is here. And here is where you've always been. This doesn't make you arrogant or dismissive of others who are still seeking. Actually, it makes you more compassionate, because you remember what it was like to feel lost when you were never actually lost. You remember what it was like to seek what you already had. You understand the beautiful, frustrating, necessary journey of going nowhere to arrive where you've always been. And you also understand something else. The journey never really ends, it just transforms. Instead of seeking to arrive somewhere else, you begin to explore the infinite depths of here. Instead of trying to become someone different, you discover the inexhaustible mystery of what you already are. The most beautiful thing about recognizing that you're already home is that you can finally relax. You can stop the exhausting effort of trying to get somewhere else. You can rest in the perfection of this moment, this awareness, this simple fact of being. You can finally enjoy the journey because you're no longer desperate to reach the destination. And in this relaxation, in this recognition, in this coming home to what you've never left, you discover the ultimate freedom. Here's the most surprising thing about spiritual awakening. When it happens, you realize it never actually happened. Not because it wasn't real, but because what you thought needed to wake up was never really asleep. It's like discovering you've been searching for your glasses while they were on your face all along. We have this idea that enlightenment is about becoming something different. We imagine it as a dramatic transformation where an ordinary person becomes an extraordinary being. We picture it as crossing a threshold from ignorance to wisdom, from suffering to bliss, from separation to unity. But what if it's actually much simpler and more ordinary than that? What if enlightenment is just noticing what's always been here? What if awakening is recognizing what's always been awake? What if the person you think needs to become enlightened is just a character in a dream, and you are the one who's been dreaming all along? Think about when you wake up from a nighttime dream. In the dream, there was a character who seemed to be you. That character had problems and desires, and a whole story playing out. But when you wake up, you realize that character was never real. It was just consciousness creating an experience of being someone. The real you was always the consciousness, not the character. Spiritual awakening works the same way. The person you think you are, with all their struggles and seeking and stories, is like the dream character. It seems completely real while you're identified with it. But when you wake up, you realize that person was just consciousness, temporarily forgetting its own nature. The consciousness itself was never asleep. It was never lost or confused or in need of awakening. It was just playing at being someone, like an actor so absorbed in a role that they temporarily forget they're acting. But the actor was always there, underneath the character. This is why enlightenment often feels like remembering rather than learning. It's not that you gain new information or develop new abilities. It's that you recognize what you've always known but somehow overlooked. It's like suddenly seeing a friend's face in a crowd. The face was always there, but now you recognize it. And here's what's beautiful about this recognition. It can happen anywhere, anytime, in the most ordinary circumstances. You don't need to be in a meditation hall or on a mountaintop or having some dramatic mystical experience. You can be washing dishes, sitting in traffic, or talking to your neighbor. Because what you're recognizing is not exotic or special. It's the most natural thing there is. You might be folding laundry and suddenly notice that the awareness watching your hands move is completely peaceful. You might be listening to someone talk and realize that the listening itself is more intimate than any words could be. You might be feeling sad and recognize that what's aware of the sadness is completely untouched by it. These ordinary moments become doorways to extraordinary recognition. The truth is that every moment is already enlightened. Every experience is already perfect exactly as it is. Every thought and feeling and sensation is already arising in pristine awareness. Nothing needs to be fixed or changed or improved for awakening to be present. Awakening is not a better experience. It's recognizing the perfection of whatever experience is happening. This means you don't have to wait for some special state to recognize your true nature. You don't have to become more peaceful or more wise or more anything. Right now, in this moment, with whatever you're thinking and feeling, the awakened awareness is fully present. It's what's reading these words, what's having these thoughts, what's experiencing this life. But the mind finds this almost impossible to believe. It wants awakening to be more dramatic, more special, more different from ordinary experience. It wants there to be fireworks and profound insights and life-changing realizations. And sometimes those things do happen, but they're not awakening itself. They're just experiences arising in awakening. The most profound awakening is often the quietest. It's the simple recognition that you've never not been awake. It's seeing that consciousness has been fully present through every experience you've ever had. It's realizing that even when you felt most lost or confused, awareness itself was completely clear. Even when you felt most separate, wholeness was never actually broken. This recognition doesn't make you a different person. It reveals that there was never really a separate person to begin with. The personality continues, the body continues, the life story continues. But the identification with being limited to those things dissolves. You realize you're the space in which all of that appears, not the content that appears in the space. It's like watching a movie and suddenly remembering you're not the character on screen, you're the screen itself. The movie doesn't stop playing, but your relationship to it completely changes. You're no longer worried about what happens to the character because you know the character is just light and shadow dancing on your unchanging surface. This shift in identity is so fundamental that it changes everything while changing nothing. Your life might look exactly the same from the outside. You might have the same job, the same relationships, the same daily routines. But the experience of being you is completely transformed. Because you're no longer being a separate someone having experiences, you're being the experiencing itself. Problems don't disappear, but your relationship to them becomes completely different. Challenges still arise, but they arise in vast spaciousness, rather than happening to a small, vulnerable self. Emotions still flow, but they flow through infinite awareness rather than overwhelming a limited person. Life continues to unfold, but it unfolds as you rather than happening to you. The search for awakening ends not because you've found what you were looking for, but because you've realized you were what you were looking for all along. The seeker dissolves not because it achieves its goal, but because it recognizes it was never separate from the goal. The spiritual journey concludes not at some distant destination, but in the recognition that you never left home. This is why they say you don't become awake, you realize you never fell asleep. The consciousness that you are has been fully present and aware through every moment of your life. It was aware when you were born, aware through childhood, aware through all your seeking and suffering and joy. It was never absent, never diminished, never actually lost. The person who seemed to wake up was always just a temporary costume worn by this deathless awareness. The one who seemed to be seeking was always just the sort appearing as a seeker. The dreamer and the dream were never two different things. It was always just consciousness playing all the parts in its own cosmic drama. And now, having recognized this, something beautiful becomes possible. Instead of seeking awakening, you can live as awakening. Instead of trying to become enlightened, you can express the enlightenment you've always been. Instead of working toward freedom, you can celebrate the freedom that was never actually bound. The awakening that never happened turns out to be the most real thing there is. And recognizing this changes how you see not just yourself, but everyone and everything around you. Because if you were never really asleep, then neither was anyone else. The same awareness, looking out through your eyes, is looking out through every pair of eyes. This recognition is the end of the spiritual search and the beginning of spiritual living. When you know you've never left home, you can finally enjoy the journey. So here we are, a few hours later, and where have we traveled? Nowhere at all. And yet somehow, everything has changed. You started this journey with questions. Why are we born? Why do we suffer? Why are we here? These felt like the most important questions in the world. And they were important, not because they needed answers, but because they led you home to yourself. What we've discovered together is something beautifully simple. You came seeking answers and found that the one who was asking was the answer. You came looking for peace and realized you are the peace that was never disturbed. You came searching for your true nature and recognized it as the very awareness doing the searching. The questions that brought you here haven't been answered. They've been dissolved. Like salt dissolving in water, they've become one with the understanding they were pointing toward. Why are we born? You are the unborn awareness in which birth appears. Why do we suffer? You are the space in which suffering arises and passes away. Why are we here? You are the here in which everything appears. This isn't the end of questioning. It's the transformation of questioning from seeking to celebrating. Questions can still arise, but they no longer carry the weight of personal urgency. They become like children playing, curious and innocent and free. Because you've found what every question was really asking for. What you've found is what you've always been, that aware presence that's been listening to these words, that open space in which every experience has appeared, that unchanging background that's remained constant through every change in your life. You haven't gained anything new, you've recognized what was never absent. This recognition changes everything while changing nothing. Your life continues, but it's no longer happening to you. It's happening as you. Your thoughts still arise, but you're no longer at their mercy. You're the space in which they appear. Your emotions still flow, but they no longer define you. They're just temporary weather in your infinite sky. The spiritual search that may have brought you here can finally rest. Not because you've achieved some goal, but because you've seen through the assumption that there was anywhere to go. The path was always leading here, to this moment, to this recognition, to this simple presence that you are. And here is where you've always been. What's beautiful about this homecoming is that it includes everyone. The same awareness that you are is what everyone else is too. When you look into someone's eyes now, you might see your own face looking back. When you hear someone's laughter, you might recognize your own joy expressing itself. The separation between self and other reveals itself as just another appearance in the one awareness that we all are. This doesn't make you special or different from others. It makes you the same as everyone at the deepest level. It doesn't elevate you above the human experience. It reveals the divine nature of ordinary human experience. It doesn't solve all your problems, but it changes your relationship to them completely. From this understanding, life becomes much simpler. Instead of trying to become someone different, you can simply be what you are. Instead of seeking experiences to complete you, you can allow experiences to flow through your completeness. Instead of working to find your purpose, you can trust the purpose that's naturally expressing itself through you. The peace you've been seeking isn't something you need to maintain or protect. It's not dependent on your circumstances being peaceful or your mind being quiet. It's the unchanging background of all experience, always present, always available, always here. You can rest in it like an ocean resting in itself. And this rest isn't passive or inactive. It's the most creative, alive, dynamic rest possible. It's like the rest of a tree that grows toward the light, or the rest of a river that flows toward the sea. Natural, effortless, perfectly responsive to what each moment requires. This is your invitation now, not to do anything or become anything or achieve anything, but simply to rest as what you are, to let the recognition settle and integrate, to allow your life to be lived from this understanding rather than from the old seeking and striving. You might find that life becomes more playful, more spontaneous, more loving, not because you're trying to be those things, but because those are the natural expressions of what you are when you're not trying to be something else. Like a flower that naturally faces the sun, you might find yourself naturally oriented toward truth, beauty, and goodness. The journey that brought you here was never really a journey at all. It was consciousness exploring its own nature through the beautiful game of forgetting and remembering what it is. And now, the remembering is complete. You've come home to yourself. But this isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of a new chapter where you live from this recognition rather than toward it, where you express what you are rather than seek what you think you lack, where you rest in being rather than strive for becoming. Welcome home. Welcome to what you've always been. Welcome to the peace that was never disturbed, the love that was never absent, the wholeness that was never broken. You are here. You have always been here, and here is exactly where you belong. The questions have dissolved into presence. The seeking has dissolved into being. The journey has dissolved into the recognition that you never left. And in this dissolution, everything remains perfectly as it is, but now you know what it is. This is coming home. This is what you are. This is where you've always been. Rest here.